The Targaryens are one of the most powerful and mysterious dynasties of Westeros. For centuries, their name inspired fear and awe. For more than 300 years, they held the Iron Throne, and throughout all that time, their power rested on one simple thing: the dragons. Because of this, they elevated themselves closer to gods than to men. In this video, we will go through the entire history of their house, from Valyria to its fall, and try to understand why the most powerful house destroyed itself. Valyria is not just a state, it is a civilization that surpassed Westeros by thousands of years in its development. It was an empire of dragon lords, around 40 great families, each of which possessed dragons. And the Targaryens were not the main among them. They were not part of the elite of elites. Rather, they were solid, middle-tier nobles among the Valyrian aristocracy. But they had one advantage that others did not: prophecy. About 12 years before the doom of Valyria, and around year 114, before the conquest, a young Daenerys the Dreamer saw a prophetic dream. Valyria perishes in fire, the earth splits apart, and the sky turns black with ash. Her father, Aegon Targaryen, did not ignore it. He gathered his entire family, took their dragons, carried away all their wealth, and left Valyria. The Targaryens settled on Dragonstone, a distant outpost of the empire at the edge of the world. They did not try to reclaim their former greatness, did not interfere in the struggle for power in Essos, and did not seek to expand their holdings. They simply waited. And then, in year 102, before the conquest, the doom of Valyria occurred. No one still knows exactly what happened. Perhaps magic spiraled out of control, or the gods decided to wipe out this empire. But the result was the same. 14 volcanoes erupted at once, and Valyria disappeared. An entire continent turned into hell. Cities sank beneath the sea, the sky was covered with ash, and the air became so poisonous that even centuries later, people are afraid to approach it. Millions died, and even dragons, the main symbol of Valyria's power, did not survive. Thus, all the great houses of Valyria disappeared, and the Targaryens, who were not the strongest or most influential, remained the only dragon lords in the world. And all because one man once believed his daughter's dream. For about 100 years after the doom of Valyria, the Targaryens lived on Dragonstone. They did not involve themselves in wars, did not try to restore the empire, and did not interfere in the affairs of Essos. From the outside, it looked like they were simply surviving. But in reality, they were waiting, and they waited long enough. Onto the stage comes the man who would change everything: Aegon, the first Targaryen. He is no longer just the Lord of Dragonstone. This is a man with ambitions on the scale of Valyria. He had something no ruler of Westeros had ever had: 3 dragons, absolute military dominance, and a clear understanding that the entire continent could be conquered. His closest allies were his own sisters and wives. Visenya, harsh, cold, a warrior to the core, rider of Vhagar, and Rhaenys, more gentle but no less dangerous, rider of Meraxes. Aegon himself ruled with the greatest of dragons, Balerion the Black Dread. On paper, his army was laughably small by the standards of Westeros, but against dragons, that meant nothing. The conquest began with a landing at the mouth of the Blackwater. It was there that Aegon founded the future capital, King's Landing. After that, everything happened rapidly. Harrenhal, considered impregnable, was turned into a burning tomb. King Harren and his entire line burned alive within their own walls. Then came the Field of Fire, the only battle in history when 3 dragons attacked simultaneously. The armies of the Reach and the Westerlands literally disappeared within minutes. After that, resistance became meaningless. Even the proudest houses, like the Starks, chose to bend the knee in order to preserve their lands and their people. Aegon makes a symbolic gesture that would define the entire era. He orders the swords of defeated enemies to be gathered and melted by Balerion's fire. Thus, the Iron Throne is created, not just as a seat of power, but as a reminder. This power is built on fire and blood. Aegon becomes the first king of Westeros, and earns the name the Conqueror. From this moment, a new era begins. An era in which the Targaryens are no longer survivors, but absolute rulers of Westeros. But after the death of Aegon the First Targaryen, the first serious crisis of the dynasty begins. Because it is one thing to conquer Westeros, and quite another to hold it. Aegon had 2 sons, Aenys and Maegor. His eldest son ascends the throne. Aenys I, and he is the complete opposite of his father. Aenys was a gentle, kind, and indecisive ruler. He did not like conflict, tried to please everyone, and constantly delayed tough decisions. The problem was that Westeros after the conquest was not a stable state, but a collection of dissatisfied lords, religious fanatics, and former kings who were just waiting for a chance to regain power. And under Aenys, that moment comes. Rebellions begin. The faith rises. The faith of the Seven does not accept Targaryen incest. Lords dissatisfied with the rule of conquerors raise their heads, and the country begins to crack apart. Aenys loses control. He runs from problem to problem, not resolving any of them fully. At some point, the situation becomes so critical that he essentially breaks. His health deteriorates, the pressure rises, and eventually he dies, leaving the country in chaos. And this is where his younger brother enters the stage, Maegor I Targaryen. If Aenys was too weak, then Maegor is the complete opposite. He does not ask for the throne, he takes it. He effectively usurps power, pushing aside Aenys's rightful heirs. And what follows is one of the darkest reigns in Targaryen history. Maegor rules through fear. He executes enemies without hesitation, destroys rebellious houses entirely, and wages open war against the faith of the Seven. He even executes the builders of the Red Keep after its completion, so that no one would know its secret passages. Yes, he temporarily stabilizes Targaryen rule and suppresses the uprisings, but the cost is absolute hatred from the entire realm. In the end, Maegor dies under mysterious circumstances, found dead on the Iron Throne. And after that, Westeros finally gets a chance to breathe, because a man will come to power who will not only hold authority, but build a system. Jaehaerys I Targaryen, known as the conciliator. Unlike his predecessors, Jaehaerys was neither weak nor cruel. He understood that ruling through fear alone was impossible, and that the realm after Maegor was exhausted by bloodshed. Jaehaerys sets himself the goal not only of holding the throne, but of building a system that would allow the Targaryen dynasty to rule long and stably. He skillfully combines a strong hand with diplomacy. Using the experience of previous rulers, he suppresses the remnants of rebellions, but does so not through excessive cruelty, but through laws, marriage alliances, and political agreements. Jaehaerys begins regularly consulting with the lords, creates a predictable system of governance, strengthens the Red Keep as a symbol of authority and order rather than fear. His sister wife, Alysanne Targaryen, becomes his loyal advisor. She helps Jaehaerys in diplomacy and in strengthening ties with both the faith and dissatisfied lords. Together, they create the image of rulers whom the realm trusts and respects. His eldest son Aemon dies prematurely and does not leave a lasting line of heirs, except for his daughter Rhaenys. His daughters Daella and Alyssa play an important role in political alliances through marriages. Jaehaerys ruled for about 55 years, one of the longest reigns in Westeros history. After his death and the death of both sons, the throne passes to his grandson, Viserys. His accession was not entirely straightforward. The question of succession had already caused tension among the nobility during Jaehaerys' lifetime. After the deaths of the senior heirs, the king convened the Great Council to avoid another war for the throne. The lords of Westeros chose Jaehaerys' grandson through the male line over Rhaenys, the daughter of his eldest son. This decision established an important precedent, preference for male line inheritance. Viserys I inherited not a broken state, but a strong and stable system created by his grandfather. Unlike Jaehaerys, Viserys was not a reformer or a strategist. He was kind, gentle, and eager to please those around him. His reign passed without major wars, but beneath the surface, contradictions began to accumulate, which he failed to resolve in time. The main problem was succession. Viserys had no surviving sons from his first marriage, and he declared his daughter, Rhaenyra, his heir. This decision went against the very precedent that had brought him to power. Later, in his second marriage to Alicent Hightower, he had children, including a son, Aegon II, and here the foundation of the future conflict is laid. Viserys tried to maintain balance. He did not revoke Rhaenyra's rights, but he also did not remove the influence of his second family. He hoped that after his death, everything would be resolved peacefully, but in doing so, he only postponed the inevitable. And it is precisely after his death that Westeros would face one of the most devastating conflicts in its history, the Dance of the Dragons. After the death of Viserys I, The tension he had long held back bursts outward. The dance of the dragons begins. A civil war within House Targaryen, where each side considers itself legitimate. On one side, the Blacks, supporters of Rhaenyra Targaryen. On the other, the Greens, supporting Aegon II Targaryen. This is no longer just a dispute over succession. It is a war of dragons against dragons. For the first time, the power that raised the Targaryens to the throne begins to destroy them. Key figures of the conflict are Rhaenyra's uncle and husband, Daemon Targaryen, who fights on her side, and Aegon II's brother, Aemond Targaryen, one of the most dangerous warriors of the Greens. The war quickly spirals out of control. Castles burn, entire houses perish, dragons kill each other. Even the capital, King's Landing, changes hands multiple times. At one point, Rhaenyra herself takes the throne, but cannot hold power. Her rule turns out to be short and brutal, and support begins to fade. The end of the war is tragic for everyone. Rhaenyra Targaryen dies, betrayed and executed on the orders of Aegon II, but his victory proves empty. He rules for a short time, exhausted by war, hatred, and losses. Soon, he also dies, poisoned by his own supporters, tired of the chaos. The Targaryen dynasty emerges from the dance of the dragons broken. Almost all dragons are destroyed, most heirs are dead, and the very idea of unquestionable right to rule is shattered. And on these ashes, a new chapter begins. After the death of Aegon II, the throne passes to Aegon III, the eldest son of Rhaenyra and Daemon. Aegon III is a boy who survived one of the most brutal wars in the history of Westeros. His reign begins not with strength, but with restoration. Aegon III was deeply traumatized. He witnessed with his own eyes the death of his mother and the horrors of war. This shaped his character. He became withdrawn, gloomy, and distrustful. Unlike his ancestors, he did not love dragons. On the contrary, he feared them. The last dragons degenerate, become weak, and eventually die out. Thus ends the era that made the Targaryens nearly invincible. From this moment, their power rests not on fire, but on politics, armies, and alliances with the lords. Aegon's reign cannot be called brilliant, but it is important. He restores the realm after catastrophe. Cities are rebuilt, connections between houses are restored, and the number of uprisings decreases. It is a time of quiet recovery, without glory, but with results. After his death, power passes to his eldest son, Daemon I. Daemon is the complete opposite of his father. Young, ambitious, and hungry for glory, he decides to do what even Aegon the Conqueror could not, conquer Dorne. And he succeeds. Daemon I conquers Dorne by force, but holding it proves much harder. A guerrilla war begins. Rebellions, betrayals. In the end, the Dornish rise up, and Daemon is killed, betrayed during negotiations. After Daemon's death, the throne passes to his brother, Baelor I. If Daemon was a warrior, then Baelor is a religious fanatic. He radically changes the course of the crown, makes peace with Dorne, disbands the army, strengthens the influence of religion, and builds the Great Sept in the capital. Baelor strives for spiritual purity, but goes too far. He isolates his own sisters, exhausts himself with fasting, and essentially loses touch with reality. Much of the realm is governed by others during his reign, including his uncle, the future king. Eventually, Baelor dies under mysterious circumstances, possibly from exhaustion or even poisoning. After Baelor, power passes to Viserys II, the brother of Aegon III. In fact, he had been ruling the realm long before becoming king. He was the power behind the throne under previous rulers, especially Baelor. Viserys II is one of the most effective administrators in Targaryen history. He restores finances, strengthens royal authority, brings order to governance, and reduces the influence of religious fanaticism. But his reign as king is very short, about 1 year. After the death of Viserys II, his son ascends the throne, Aegon IV, the Unworthy. He earned his nickname for a reason. Unlike his predecessors, he cared little for the state and focused on personal pleasures. His reign is characterized by corruption at court, distribution of titles and lands to favorites, constant intrigue, and the weakening of central authority. But his most destructive decision comes before his death. Aegon IV officially legitimizes all his bastards, and there were many of them. Among them stands out Daemon Blackfyre, to whom he even gives the Targaryen ancestral sword, a symbol of power. This effectively places him on the same level as the legitimate heir. With this act, Aegon lays the foundation for future civil wars, the Blackfyre Rebellion. After the death of Aegon IV, power passes to his legitimate son, Daeron II. He tries to rule wisely and peacefully, strengthens the kingdom, and even brings Dorne into the realm not through war, but through marriage. But it is under him that the first major crisis sparked by his father erupts. The legitimized bastard demon Blackfyre becomes a rallying point for dissatisfied nobles and raises a rebellion. Many consider him a more suitable king than Daeron, especially those who oppose closer ties with Dorne. The war reaches its climax at the Battle of the Redgrass Field, where Daemon is killed. However, his death does not end the conflict. His sons and supporters flee into exile and continue to consider themselves the rightful claimants to the throne. Daeron II had several sons, each of whom played a role in the history of the dynasty, and their fates turned out quite different. The eldest, Baelor Breakspear, was considered the ideal heir, intelligent, just, a good warrior and diplomat, respected by both nobles and common people. Many saw in him a future great king, but his life is tragically cut short during a trial by combat when he receives a fatal blow. His death becomes a heavy blow to the realm and significantly changes the course of history. The next son, Aerys I, eventually takes the throne after his father. Unlike his father, he shows little interest in governing the realm, preferring books, prophecies, and hidden knowledge. Real power at this time is concentrated in the hands of Bloodraven, who becomes Hand of the King and effectively rules the state, suppressing new conspiracies and watching for possible Blackfyre supporters. It is during Aerys's reign that attempts by Daemon's descendants to reclaim the throne continue, but without the previous scale, more like a lingering shadow of an old war than a full threat, although internal tension never fully disappears. Aerys had no children, so the next in line was his brother Rhaegal. But Rhaegal did not live to inherit. He died during Aerys's lifetime. As a result, after Aerys's death, the crown passed to the next brother, Maekar. Maekar I is the most severe and warlike of the brothers. He is strict, disciplined, and better suited for war than court life. He is not inclined to intrigue or mysticism like Aerys, and rules more harshly, relying on strength and order. Under him, the consequences of the Blackfyre conflicts continue, and tension remains in the realm, but he keeps the situation under control. His reign ends quite suddenly. He dies during the suppression of a rebellion. Maekar had several sons, and with them begins another succession complication. The eldest, Daeron, does not become king because he dies before his father. He is known as a lover of wine and pleasure and leaves no strong legacy. The next son, Aerion, known as Brightflame, is extremely unstable and cruel, with dangerous tendencies. He is effectively removed from power and also dies before he can take the throne. The third son, Aemon Targaryen, is, on the contrary, one of the most worthy, but he voluntarily renounces his claim to the throne, becoming a maester and taking vows. In the end, the youngest son remains, Aegon V, also known as Egg. The reign of Aegon V can be described as one of the most humane, and at the same time, one of the most tragic in Targaryen history. He did not grow up at court, but traveled across Westeros as a squire to Sir Duncan the Tall, and therefore understood the lives of common people well. Becoming king, he tries to carry out reforms, improve the lives of the people, and limit the power of the nobility, which causes resistance from the lords. He ruled for 26 years. It was generally a stable, though tense reign. The realm still lived in the shadow of the Blackfyre conflicts, and relations between the crown and the nobility remained complicated. Sir Duncan remained by his side throughout, eventually becoming Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. However, toward the end of his life, Aegon became increasingly obsessed with the idea of bringing dragons back. He likely saw this as a way to finally strengthen royal power and complete his reforms. This led to the tragedy at Summerhall in year 259, where during an attempt to hatch dragon eggs, a terrible fire broke out. Both Aegon and Sir Duncan died there. After his death, the throne passed to his son, Jaehaerys II. The reign of Jaehaerys II was very short, only 3 years. He was intelligent and kind, but physically weak and sickly. Compared to his father, he did not have time to carry out major reforms, but it was during his reign that an important event occurred. The War of the Ninepenny Kings was repelled, the last major attempt by the Blackfyres to reclaim the throne. The victory temporarily strengthened Targaryen rule. After Jaehaerys, the crown passed to his son, Aerys II, known in history as the Mad King. At the beginning, his reign seemed quite successful. The young king was charismatic, and his hand was Tywin Lannister, who effectively kept the realm in order. But over time, Aerys became increasingly cruel and unstable. After his captivity during the defiance of Duskendale, his mental state deteriorated completely. He began seeing conspiracies everywhere, feared his own courtiers, and increasingly gave brutal orders, especially favoring executions by burning. His eldest son and heir was Prince Rhaegar, noble, intelligent, and, in the opinion of many, a far more worthy future king. It was around him that the events unfolded that led to the fall of the dynasty. Prince Rhaegar disappeared with Lyanna Stark, who was betrothed to Robert Baratheon. Everyone believed he had kidnapped her, and this became the direct cause of war. Lyanna's brother, Brandon Stark, demanded justice, but the Mad King Aerys II executed him along with his father. After that, Robert Baratheon, Ned Stark, and Jon Arryn raised a rebellion against the Targaryens. During the war, Rhaegar Targaryen was killed at the Battle of the Trident by Robert. After that, the fate of the Targaryens was effectively sealed. When the forces of Tywin Lannister entered King's Landing, Aerys ordered the city to be burned with wildfire. At that moment, he was killed by Jaime Lannister, Tywin's son and one of the King's Guard. After Aerys's death, Targaryen rule in Westeros ended, and Robert Baratheon became king. The remaining heirs of the house, Viserys and Daenerys Targaryen, were smuggled to Essos. Viserys later died, while Daenerys grew up and, years later, returned to try to reclaim the Iron Throne. In the series, the fate of the Targaryens is both tragic and symbolic. Daenerys Targaryen nearly achieves her goal, but after burning King's Landing, she begins to follow the same path as her father. In the end, she is killed by Jon Snow, who is later revealed to be the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, meaning that by blood, he is also a Targaryen, and effectively the last legitimate heir of the dynasty. After Daenerys' death, Drogon destroys the Iron Throne, and Jon goes beyond the wall. Formally, the bloodline still lives on through Jon, but as a ruling dynasty, the Targaryens in the series come to an end. From Aegon the Conqueror, who united the Seven Kingdoms through the power of dragons, to the Mad King and the fall of the Iron Throne, their path became a story of greatness, power, tragedy, and self-destruction. They came with fire and dragons, ruled Westeros for centuries, but in the end were destroyed by their own ambitions, internal conflicts, and madness. Write in the comments which house's history you would like to hear in the next video. Don't forget to support the video with a like and a follow, and I'll see you next time.